Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of Pod Strickland. I'm your host, Shwin and This episode 399. I'm joined, as always, by my co-host Stacy. That is at StacyPan89 on Twitter. Stacy, how are you doing on this? It is a very beautiful Monday morning.
Beautiful Monday morning, right after Mother's Day, and I don't remember anything else that happened yesterday. So
Nothing of note. Nothing of note. We will talk about that very little of note that occurred yesterday. But before we do that, I do have to make a few announcements first. Strickland has an Instagram. Check that out. That is at the Strickland on Instagram. We're posting all kinds of new content there. Strickland also has a YouTube channel where you may be watching this podcast. If you haven't done so already, please hit like, subscribe to the channel, leave us a comment. That'd be a huge help to us. The Strickland also has merchandise which you can find on our website at www.thestrick.land. There's a link that'll take you to the merchandise store, and you can find all kinds of cool content on there. T-shirts, sweatshirts, hats, coffee mugs, water bottles, you name it, we've got it. We've also got a whole new Nova York line. Check that out. Definitely worth your time. Strickland also has a Patreon, which you can subscribe to. There are a number of different tiers. There's a $6 tier that gets you access to Pod Strickland, the podcast that I host every Friday with Prez. You also get access to Takes One of His Bozos, our news podcast that is hosted by Andrew Steele, aka Doug, along with Zach Blatter. You also got access to the Strickland Discord where the conversation never stops. There are further tiers. There's a $9 tier that gets you access to Strickland Roll, my solo pod where I rant and rave with the Knicks even more. You also get access to wonderful premium articles by Matthew Miranda, one of the best in the business. And now you get access to Strictly NFL, our NFL podcast, which is hosted by Contra Team Mexico's. There are further tiers. There's $15 tier, $30 tier, $50 tier, and $100 tier that comes with a variety of additional benefits, like listening to product recordings, merchandise discounts, and even potentially co-hosting a podcast alongside yours truly one day, whether you choose to subscribe or not. And this would be possible without you. And none of this would be possible without BetOnline. BetOnline is your number one source for all your summer sports this season. From MLB, golf, NBA, and NHL playoff stats, all the latest stats, news, and scores available to follow your favorite teams. Get the latest odds and lines, including the latest team matchups, player props, and odds on just about every sport out there. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to get in on the action. BetOnline, where the game starts. So the Knicks lose. They lose both Game 3 and 4. Game 3, a nail-biter, which they were unable to close out in the end, and Game 4, which was the opposite of a nail-biter, more of an ass-kicking. The Knicks lose 121-89. I don't know. I guess I'll just let you kind of, what was your takeaway? I mean, I don't know. Game 3, I don't think there's necessarily needs to be a huge post-mortem on that 3 days after, given that, I don't know, that game just seemed like you lost it a little bit on the margins there. And I will again reiterate that, like, if anybody is upset that I'm not going to talk about the officiating at the end of Game 3, I'm not going to apologize for that, because I don't think the Knicks lost that game because of the officiating, even if they did have a couple of tough calls go against them. Not really interested in litigating that, and I find this entire bizarre discourse that seems to be occurring now after every single fucking playoff game, and not just the Knicks series, in every series apparently, about NBA officiating to be ridiculous. But yeah, I guess what were your thoughts after yesterday?
So my thoughts were, every other team, I believe, and you can correct me on this, I don't think any other team has gone without getting blown out at least once, right? Certainly the teams that are still alive. Am I incorrect on that? Maybe Oklahoma City hasn't gotten blown out, but
no, Oklahoma City's gone. They got there. I mean, I guess they didn't get blown out, right? No, they haven't gotten blown out yet. Yeah.
Yeah. So the vast majority of teams are going to have one game like this. The ball doesn't. I thought the Knicks got reasonably good looks. I don't know what the final numbers were, but I do know well into garbage time, they were 3 for 29 from 3. That's not going to get it done in this day and age. I don't think a lot of them were bad shots. I think they missed a lot of open shots. Deuce McBride has performed well beyond his years. Shots haven't been going down. I like that for the most part he stayed aggressive yesterday. I thought he did a nice job getting some rhythm late in those garbage time minutes. But I think the biggest thing that's worrisome to me, I think you had said this, and I would have agreed that you probably expect this to be 2-2 after 4 games, even before the series, right? I think both of us picked Knicks in 6. So in that sense, it's nothing. I think just the blowout in isolation isn't anything to be concerned about. What is concerning is This is a team that Nick struggled against without OG Anunoby in the regular season, and we know how impactful he is. That's why that trade has been so good, and his health makes me a lot more concerned. And I understand why the Pacers are favored now, according to Vegas, to win the series. And defensively, there's a lot to fix. I know they will come out and I know Thibs is going to be hard at work. I know the guys are committed to it. But OG covers up a lot. He's really the only real big wing. I know Precious can play that role on defense, but you don't trust him really as a shooter. Hasn't worked at the 4 with him playing next to Hartenstein. So I think it was a good adjustment to try Deuce. It just wasn't our night yesterday or afternoon, whatever.
Well, I mean, it wasn't. I mean, he adjusted it when we were down 28. I don't really think that says anything.
Yeah, he was searching, right? I think he was searching with a lot of his lineups. I'm hoping that the starters next game does reflect that adjustment. We'll see what happens. But to me, the most concerning thing is they looked like a worse team without OG. The shots will fall. They won't be quite as poor on defense, and Indiana won't shoot quite as lights out. But it's a loss that cannot be overstated. But the last thing I'll say is I don't expect an emotional hangover from the Knicks. If they lose, I think it's because they're just too short-handed. I think they had a very tough loss in Game 3, by any standard, right? And that's what happens. You play. So with my initial point, every game has been close. There's been short turnarounds, and you have this attrition. A game like this, I don't want to say it's to be expected, but after all of that, the blowout can kind of function like a little bit of a break. And other teams have had that break where they'll maybe have a game where the guys don't go all the way because they're getting blown out. So, in that sense, I expect the Knicks to look a lot more energetic and to play better on Tuesday, on Tuesday. But I think the most concerning thing to me is just they haven't looked the same all year without OG Anunoby.
I mean, they played their best defensive game of the series without OG.
In Game 3?
Yeah. They won their only game against Indiana in the regular season without OG.
Well, they never played him with OG, and they lost the season series.
Right, but they won their one game without him. And that was after the trade. So that was no Randall, no OG. I mean, it's basically the same team that they had now. Because I don't think they hadn't even traded for Bojan or Brooks then. So I guess you could say they had Grimes. I'm not sure that Grimes was particularly effective in that game or at any point this season, really. Are the odds against them? Sure, fine. But
don't tell me the odds.
No, I mean, kind of. With this team, I don't really think the odds are that important. I mean, they're important, and can't constantly just keep fighting against the odds. But I think they had a bad game yesterday. They had a bad game. I think they were tired. They looked absolutely shot. Not even shot. I mean, that's not even right. They just didn't. They could not dial it up yesterday. They could not find that extra gear that they have found. I'll say the things that are most concerning to me I think their attention to detail defensively has been bad this series, really bad.
That can be a function of fatigue as well.
Yeah, it can definitely be a function of fatigue, but constantly jumping at shooters, especially early in games, it's been a consistent theme. And it's not just Josh Hart. OG was doing it. Dante's doing it. They're all just how many of the threes that Haliburton is getting is it not? It's not even a result of wow, incredible shot making or wow, what a wonderful set the Pacers ran. It's overreacting to a kick out to a shooter, and it's oh my god, it's dude, that's Obi Toppin. You don't probably know close out to him, but you probably don't need to fly at him he's prime Clay or something. They've got to just stop overreacting. And then the other part is they've got to have a better resistance to allowing them into the paint. That was a problem even when OG was playing. Maybe he can cover up more in terms of once they're in the paint, he makes life harder because of his wingspan. He gives you an extra level of rim protection with his, kind of just his overall length and his ability to play that help defender role. But that's not that they were still scoring. I don't want to say, you could say it at ease in the first 2 games of the series, even with OG. So Like there were stretches, obviously, when he was on the floor that the Knicks were great defensively. You know, we saw that in game 2, especially the start of game 2, and then obviously in the third quarter of game 2. But like they weren't good defensively in those games either, and a lot of that has to do with non-OG defenders. Like I get that I know that Josh Hart is. Look, the guy's played way more minutes than he should have. He's being asked to do 15 different things. You know, as far as hey, we need you to solidify us on the defensive glass. We also need you to be able to go coast to coast and juice our transition offense. We're going to need you to make some kick out threes because you kind of have to, and so on and so forth. He's playing above and beyond his pay grade, really, and has done it admirably, more than admirably. He's done it at a level that I don't think anybody could reasonably have expected at various points of this season. So, like, this isn't really like me shitting on him, but the guy's been bad defensively in the series, like really bad. He has not shut down anybody. I don't care about when Pascal Siakam makes some shots over him. I don't give a shit about that. That's nothing he can do about that. But when you're getting blown by every fucking time by TJ McConnell or Andrew Nemhard or name a player, Aaron Nesmith, it doesn't matter. Yeah. Like that's not like you can't. Then you're putting your other defenders in bad position. And Hartenstein had a terrible game. I mean, I thought in game 3, to me, I didn't view that as a fatigue game or him being terrible or soft or anything. I just thought he was trying very consciously to avoid fouls.
Yesterday, and you have to give some credit to Turner. Like he played well.
No, we don't need to give any fucking credit to Miles Turner. And yesterday, I thought he just didn't like Josh Hart and like the rest of their team. But I think those two guys in a lot of ways feed your energy in ways that nobody else does. At least out of the guys we have available. He just did not have it. I mean, he had a turnover yesterday in the second half, the start of the second half, where he literally just threw it at Miles Turner's hand. Like, I don't have any idea what I get what he was looking at because I think it was Dante cutting wide open down the paint, but I don't know how he ever expected that pass to get through with how he was trying to deliver it. You saw him multiple times yesterday, just not get over to box somebody out or make a rotation, but then not make another rotation, or just watch somebody dribble penetrate and not really go after to block the shot. And like, that's very uncharacteristic of him. That was a very uncharacteristic performance from the entire team. But I think in a lot of ways, Josh Hart and Isaiah Hartenstein exemplified it the most with just how little they were able to give you. And then on top of that, yeah, you've got Brunson's injury, which, he keeps saying he's fine. He was short on every single jumper yesterday. That usually is a sign of either fatigue or an injury. I don't know. We'll see. I'm not going to make excuses for him. The guy's on the floor. It is what it is. He's got to battle through it, which is his mindset as well. So hopefully he's able to do that. But the Dante one to me, he's the one guy. I didn't really think he looked exhausted yesterday. I just think he played a bad game. 2, because everybody else was terrible. His defense being bad was exacerbated. And then he just didn't make shots, which, okay, that happens. Like, that's just like he had 35 the night before. I don't think it was like a matter of to me, he didn't look that fatigued. He looked like he just missed shots. Deuce obviously has not had a good series at all. I thought he played fine in game 3. I actually thought he was pretty solid in game 3 and probably should have played more in game 3. I would have brought him in much sooner. I would have left him in the 4th instead of Alec Burks. I thought that was a mistake at the time, but it is what it is. I mean, I'm not going to kill Thibs for that. I think that was a marginal decision. My opinion, he picked wrong. Do I know that if he picked Deuce, we would own the game? No, I don't know that. And Deuce did come in later, and it's not like all of a sudden we turn back into gangbusters. So we'll never know what would have happened in my scenario. He's got to play better. I was happy he stayed in the game for a long time yesterday, even during garbage time. I think he got to see the ball go through the net a few times, hopefully caught a rhythm because they're going to need him. And I did like that Thibs at least started the second half with him, although he pulled the plug on that pretty quick, not just because Deuce himself wasn't making shots or that lineup wasn't getting stops or couldn't really put a dent in the lead, but I think because he just saw that Hart and Hartenstein came out, I think, at the same time, and they never came back in the game. And I think Thibs never had any intention of putting them back in the game because they did not have anything yesterday. They had no juice. That's just what it is. But like, I do think there are things Thibs can do better too. Like, they've put themselves in deficits of their own making at the start of these last 2 games by starting Precious. Precious at the 4 is not good. I'm sorry. Like, I
It
know
forces you to play Sims more too.
yeah, it forces you to play Sims more, which is, I mean, it doesn't really force you to play Sims more. You can manage that if you want, but the way Thibs wants to run his rotation, it forces you to play Sims, which is dumb because Sims is fucking awful. He's terrible. So don't do that. And also the Precious at the 4 lineup. I'll tell you my biggest issue with it is this, and I think Jeff actually tweeted something out about this maybe after the game and during the game on his Twitter. But like, what? Okay, so you're playing Precious at the 4, presumably because you want to match up with Siakam. Fine. He's not doing a particularly good job defensively. He is not doing a good job, particularly on the defensive glass. And offensively, he does absolutely nothing to complement Jalen Brunson in that lineup. Like, it basically gave Indiana a free pass yesterday to just show bodies constantly. They did not defend him. They literally were not defending Precious Chua. He got a couple open dunks off cuts because of that. That's not a sustainable way to live, dude. Like, that's just not real. Unless you have Nikola fucking Jokic as your center, you can't get away with a 4 like that. And even then, Aaron Gordon is he's just a much better offensive player than Precious Chua. That just is what it is. Like, Precious can't create like that at all. He's also, I know Gordon's not a good shooter. Precious is a much worse shooter as far as I'm concerned. Like, it's just not the same thing. And we don't have Jokic. Surprise, surprise. As much as Hartenstein might be the Jokic of the East, that is a big difference. But like, it just, I don't get any of that. And I'm sorry, like, the dumbest thing about this, and this is why I hope that Thibs has learned his lesson, and I hope that coming out to start that second half with Deuce was him adjusting. The Knicks went 4-8 in February when they started Precious. I'm actually gonna pull this up because I wanna make sure I have the full kind of how it all played out this year. So let me pull this up. All right, the Knicks this year, they. All right, let's do this. So Julius Randle and Julius Randle and OG Anunoby go out on January 27th at the end of against Miami Heat. That's the last game they played for a long time. Julius obviously out for the rest of the season. They win their next 3 starting Precious against Utah, Indiana. At Charlotte, Utah, Indiana. But in February, they go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. They go 4-12 that month, starting Precious. They lose 4 in a row at one point, including a loss to the Pacers, 111-125 at the Garden. And generally looked like the season was, I don't want to say veering out of control, but not pointed in the right direction. They then lose. They win against Cleveland. They lose to Atlanta, beat Orlando, lose an embarrassing game, one of the worst games of the season against Philly, a 73-79 debacle. Offense has totally cratered over this time period. Fortunately for the Knicks, OG comes back. Great. OG's back. We are good to go. They win their next 3 with OG back in the lineup. Unfortunately, OG re-aggravated his elbow. So, after 3 games, we are back to Precious Achiuwa. No, we're not, actually. Because Tom Thibodeau decides, you know what? I'm going to start Deuce. I'm going to play Deuce because we have seen enough that the Precious Achiuwa lineup does not work. We need to get floor spacing around Brunson. We will have to adjust and take some hits on the defensive glass, but I think the trade-off will be worth it. And you want to know what? He was right. It was worth it. The Knicks then basically saved their season. They go, I think OG came back against the Bulls on the road, which is on April 5th. But between March 18th and April 5th, they go, let's see, 101, 4-1, 4-4, 5-5, They go 5-4. Okay, so not like they were world beaters, but that starting lineup was fucking fantastic. That starting lineup, which I'm going to pull up for you right now, using pbpstats.com. That lineup was basically the best lineup, I believe, in the NBA and in terms of net rating. So that lineup is Brunson, it is Dante, it is Josh Hart, it is McBride, and it is Hartenstein. That lineup played 172 minutes, had a plus 31.37 net rating. They were 142.4 offensive rating and 111 defensive rating. They shot likely unsustainably hot in those minutes, and their opponents actually didn't shoot poorly. They were 55% from the field and 34% from three. The Knicks shot 62.6% from the field and 47.7% from three. Look, those percentages probably don't hold up, but I'm going to roll with the minutes of that group over the Precious group, which was worse, with Precious in instead of Deuce over the course of the season. That lineup played 189 minutes. They were a plus 8.2, 123 offensive rating, 114.9 defensive rating. They shot 55.6% from the field, 35% from the field, 50.5% from the field allowed to opponents, and 43.7% from three. Look, the numbers are what they are. I'm not going to kill Thibs for trying it because I get the logic of trying Siakam, but I think in the playoffs, when you're allowing a team to just effectively ignore a defender like that or an offensive player like that and load up in the paint,
and you're not getting the trade-off on the other end either.
Yeah, right. Like he's not doing and honestly, like, I'm sorry, I'm totally fine if they want to go mismatch hunting with Pascal Siakam on Josh Hart or Isaiah Hartenstein. I'm very, very okay with that because to me, you are now taking them out of actually what they want to do. They don't want to mismatch hunt. They don't want to throw it into Pascal and have him cook. Like, that's not what they really want to do. But, I mean, but you can bait them into doing it. I think that's worth it. I think it's worth it. And you know what? If it doesn't work, guess what you can do? Okay, it didn't work. Go back to what you were doing. Try something different. It doesn't really matter. You only have so many options right now. But I feel very confident that the option where you're playing definitely two non-shooters and basically three, because even though Josh Hart has shot the ball well from in the playoffs from three, teams are still not closing out. They're not defending him like an awesome shooter, and he's still not confident taking that shot at the volume that you need him to take it to really make that viable, to at least give some type of like 3-out spacing. You're just making life really hard for Brunson, and I think you got to try to make life easier for him, especially given the offensive load the guy's been carrying. Like, do him a favor, you know? Yeah, so again, look, the Knicks didn't lose this game because Thibs started Precious. Obviously, that's ridiculous. Like, they lost by fucking 32 points, and they were down by 40 at one point. Like, you didn't lose the game because Thibs started a certain lineup. They were going to lose this game no matter what the fuck they did. That's clear. But the series is not over, as much as it might feel like that to certain people right now. It's 2-2. This is technically, it's like you held serve. Both teams have held serve. That's all that's happened so far. It's about adjusting, though, and figuring out what your best way to get 2 of 3 is now. And I'm sorry, like, I do not fear Indiana's physicality. I know they've rebounded well in this series, and they've taken advantage of some Knicks fatigue issues and Knicks size issues. I'm willing to take that bet. I want to make them try to, you want to beat us up inside? Go for that. Let's see it. Let's see you do it. I want you to do that to start every game. And I want you to do that for 48 minutes. Let's see how comfortable you are doing that. And I think on the other end, I will bet that Deuce McBride shoots better from three. Given enough shots, I feel confident he will shoot better from three because his full season's kind of resume has shown me that. And he was good against the Sixers in the playoffs. So I have no reason to all of a sudden doubt that he can't do it in the playoffs, or that like really like Indiana's so good on defense that like he's incapable of making shots against them. I don't buy that either. So I'm gonna roll with I would roll with that lineup, and I would feel very, very comfortable doing so because I think I've seen enough with Precious. And you know what? If he doesn't want to start Deuce, then start Burks at this point. I don't really care. The point is you've got to like you're not going to play some amazing defensive lineup right now. It's just not going to happen. It's just not. With your personnel available, it is not going to happen. So what can you do? I think you have to pick to juice your offense as best you can. And
Or
in the Knicks case,
offense.
yes. Or in the Knicks case, right now, as it is, that means playing 4 out, having 4 perimeter guys around 1 big, and seeing how that goes. And it also, again, like you mentioned, it pushes Precious back to the bench, which means you don't have to play Sims any minutes. There's a lot of benefits to just simplifying your decision making. Whereas I think putting Precious in the starting lineup complicates the decision making for Thibs. And that is a difficult thing. And like the final thing I'll say too is about Brunson. Like, dude, yesterday there were multiple plays, whether Deuce was hitting the shots or not. You can go watch the plays where Deuce is in with him, with that lineup, or or when Precious is in with him in that lineup. On the same plays that he's kicking to Deuce out to a corner 3-4, he's blatantly ignoring Precious and putting up contested mid-range jumpers over like 1 or 2 guys, like 2 guys really most of the time. That should tell you everything you need to know. That should tell you everything you need to know. Because if Deuce makes a couple of those threes instead of missing them, and they were good looks, they're good looks for a quality shooter. If he makes a couple of those threes, all of a sudden now Indiana has to think about how aggressive they want to be about sending help. And that changes the coverages and the pressure that Brunson is under.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a tendency to overreact to bad shooting on good looks. I think we saw it a little bit with Quickly last year. I think there's something a little bit more to it because Quickly has a lower release. But one, he was still a net positive in his minutes, and before the injury, obviously. And so I think there was an argument that it's a shooter. He's still going to draw some attention. The same thing I think we both believed with Grimes, during that Heat series where you had Hart and RJ playing together and it crushed the spacing. And we saw it this year with Dante, right? Dante DiVincenzo, he had the big threes in game 2. He had a good game 2, but the first out of the first 4 games, first 5 games really, he was 4 out of 5 games, I believe, not very good shooting the ball, but he's getting good looks. And then the floodgates opened, and he's been terrific. He was awesome in game 3. I think that's worth mentioning. One of the better performances of the postseason, period. And I think but especially 3-point shooters, sometimes the ball's not gonna go in. And I think you see a lot where people will just say he's playing like ass when it's just the open. Like I think people will look at that variance and not really understand what's going on. It'd be one thing if Deuce was just, if they were just the contests were better. He's missing wide open shots, and
or if he was like jacking up bullshit shots.
Yeah, he was. He's just missing. He's getting the same shots, and they're not falling down. And sometimes that happens to even great shooters. That happens to Steph Curry. Obviously the highs are a lot higher, and probably the lows are not as extended as other players. But I think when judging whether to play a guy like that, you have to look at the whole thing, which I'm sure Thibs is doing. For example, like I don't necessarily think Burks is a better option than Deuce, even though he shot the ball well the last 2 games. I do think it's somewhat encouraging that he looks at least like a viable option who's not going to hijack the offense. For some reason, of all the things that went wrong yesterday, one of the most frustrating things about Burks this regular season was he's the one who has these dark arts in the paint, and he wasn't getting those calls this year. And then it's just a double whammy where he's throwing up garbage to get a foul, and he's not getting it. Weirdly, he's getting those calls now, which cool. And I would imagine that if he did have the shoulder issue, the time off actually helped. So he is the most fresh guy of guys who are playing. But I think to your point, like you don't overreact to a guy missing open shots like this, especially when he has a track record of making them and the defense isn't doing anything to pay. I think it's correct to surmise that at this point the Knicks are not going to be able to lock up Indiana. They have to give themselves as much of a chance on offense as possible. I do think that defensive rebounding continues to be a concern. To your point, Precious has not helped with that. I know that I think the Knicks out-rebounded they had more offensive rebounds than the Pacers, but as a percentage of missed shots, I think the Pacers actually must have out-rebounded them on offense because they just weren't missing a lot of shots, and the Knicks missed basically everything.
Yeah, I also saw a lot of Pacers fans like, oh, of course the Knicks, look at them, they lost this game and they still outshot us on the free throw line. It's like, dude, you didn't need to shoot free throws because you guys made every fucking shot. Like that's how you didn't get to the line. And also a lot of those free throws I think we got were like, the game was over. Like they were like irrelevant calls. Like whatever.
Yeah. So the Pacers had 9 offensive rebounds. The Knicks had it wasn't just Pacers. I mean, even I'll talk about. So the Knicks had 16 offensive rebounds, a lot of them late. But if you look at they must have missed. They missed 59 shots. The Pacers missed 38. Right. So when you look at it that way, the Knicks and so at nine giving up 9 offensive rebounds out of 38 shots, especially in this team, is not good. And defensive rebounding has been an issue all series. So that is something that you'd hope they need to clean up. To your point, Hart being gassed probably doesn't help there because he's one of their best rebounders. Hartenstein having to constantly deal with penetration and help doesn't help either. But Jeff had a tweet where the Knicks won the possession battle. They turned the ball over fewer times. They had way more free throws. That's kind of been their formula, but they, obviously were blown out. And I think I think that one, you're seeing the role of 3-point variance there, but I also think it tells you that you need to do something to put the odds in your favor, the 3-point, because I don't think you're just going to lock this team up. I think they can do a better job stopping dribble penetration. I think they can do a better job on the defensive glass. Hart with some more energy, maybe generate some more deflections. But that is kind of just you're going to have to play an offensive game. I do want to ask about this because I've seen some discussion even before yesterday, where the pace has been at Indiana's preferred level. I think there's been a lot of fast breaks or whatever. But I think that's a conversation that I always feel like, well, I don't think the Knicks are giving up transition opportunities because, like, after the Knicks get a layup on transition, right? It's not like that's ending with the Pacers immediately running back, right? I think you can say if you feel like the Knicks have a penchant all playoffs for making some boneheaded turnovers in transition. If you want to talk about that, like if you're not a great transition team, don't run. That's fair. And if you want to say, you're playing these guys 46 minutes, you need to slow the game down at least when you can. But I also think the flip side is if you want to keep Indiana out of transition, the best way to do that is to make your shots. It's tough when you're missing a lot of shots, which the Knicks have been in the half court. They're going to look to push off the miss. When in the half court, if you're more prone to turnovers, particularly when Brunson's out of the game or when you're playing this 2 big lineup, you want to avoid that. And the best way to avoid that is to try to get transition opportunities. But I'm curious if you think they need to slow down on offense or anything like that.
This is what I think. The Knicks, I'm just going to read game by game. This is starting game 4 and going back. These are just the pace numbers. 95.7. Just on Basketball Reference, by the way, just in case anybody's wondering. 90.8. 91.5. 95.5. I don't think any of these games have been played particularly fast. I think people are just completely lost because the previous series against Philly was much more. I mean, it was a lot slow. It was slow as hell. The pace in that series was 90.3. The pace in this series overall is 93.4. So I mean, that's a pretty significant difference. But you're talking about slow as shit. We're still pretty slow. Like, this is not a fast series. So I just don't even agree with the premise at all. Like, I don't think they're playing fast. I think it's just kind of jarring because of how slow every possession was against Philly. It's just not that fast of a series so far.
Do you think they should have a different approach in transition at all, though? Given,
I mean, you got to make smarter decisions. They've got to finish better. It feels like this series. I mean, I don't even know the numbers because I thought their transition against Philly was a problem, but then apparently at the end of that series, we were the second best team in the playoffs in transition. So maybe I'm just like, I have, blue and orange goggles and I'm just uber focused on the shit the Knicks are doing wrong. But like, I mean, I thought that they had some shitty fast breaks yesterday. I mean, one of them, like Brunson just smoked a layup that he clearly, I don't care what he says. That's either fatigue or an injury. He's going to have to figure that out. He's got to overcome it, but it is what it is. But like Josh Hart had one right at the start of the game where he drove it, he like threw it widely back to Dante, who had to catch it on the move, and then he turned it over. It's just, they've got to make smarter decisions with that too. Like, look, sometimes it's not there. Sometimes it's just not there. And it's okay to pull it back and not try to, force it. Like that's really the key to me is can you make, can you just make smart decisions? But their overall approach, I don't really have a problem with it. And I just think this entire idea that like the series been playing, we're playing at some breakneck speed. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's just not true. It's just not. Like, I think what people are struggling with is that Indiana has successfully been able to get into the paint early on in their shot clock, but they're not like shooting often that early in the shot clock. I think they're having to like make an extra 2 or 3 passes, and they've done that well to their credit. And the Knicks have defended it poorly. They've overreacted, which you talked about earlier in the pod. So they've got to do a better job with that. But I don't think their initial approach is bad.
Yeah. I mean, they're going to need easy buckets, right? I think if you want to stop the transition offense, and I don't know if it was Jeff who said this, or I think it was XJ on their pod, Hot Hand Theory, but I'm just saying it's one thing that people talk about the Indiana transition offense, but they were a very effective half court team as well. So this is a potent offense, and not having depth at center, obviously losing OG hurts. I do want to say that I get kind of the frustration with so much of the shit talking that comes. It's like, why are they celebrating? They're beating a completely depleted team. If the Knicks lose this series, I don't think we should be taking anything away from Indiana. I think it's completely fair as we look at this roster going forward, and as you're evaluating Thibs, you have to take that into account. You can't just say, this means it's not working or they need a 1A or all that shit. But I do think like just the same as being frustrated by all the focus on officiating, I do think it's not worth it to try to take away from a team that is winning a playoff series. And frankly, Indiana played well yesterday. I do want to talk a little bit more about Alec Burks. I know there was
is the frustration actually though about? I don't think the frustration is that Indiana's like they're. I don't think that the frustration for me, I can only speak for myself. The frustration for me isn't that Indiana shit talking. The frustration for me is that through the first 2 games, it was, game 1, wow, they got destroyed. They got killed by the refs. That again became some weird narrative after game 2, which is insane to me considering what occurred in that game. And then
you didn't think there was big market bias going on?
No, I did not. But I guess maybe there was, and then they somehow managed to ignore that the last couple of games or something. I don't know. I never know how that stuff works.
Maybe they ignored it for 20 years too.
Maybe. And my frustration is that then, okay, that's fine. But then also, Tyrese Haliburton, he's hurt. So, oh my God, we have to but then now he's not hurt. And now he can run his mouth and shit talk and talk all this fucking. I mean, even in game 3, he was happy to run his mouth during the first half and everything was good. Everything's flowing. He was cooking. He's getting wide open threes. He was happy to run his mouth then. And
It's
what did
easy
he do
to
in the
talk
second
shit
half?
when you're up.
Yeah, he didn't do anything in the second half. Yeah, he had a nice little stretch to start the fourth quarter, but he wasn't running his mouth. And he didn't want anything to do with anything to do with the ball at the end of the game. Andrew Nemhart, please save me. Like, I'm sorry, that shit is corny to me. And everything about that guy is corny to me. Like, I don't give a fuck what anybody thinks. I don't buy that whole fucking thing with the ankle. Okay, first of all, the guy after game 3 looks like, he's limping off like he just fucking, I don't know, like he fucking stormed the beach at Normandy or something. And then before the game yesterday, I think Doris was talking about some, alleged conversation. By the way, I just want to say, I always wonder if they're like, oh, we talked to this guy yesterday. I'm like, did you actually talk to him, or is this like a made up thing? But like, she's like, oh, we were talking to Tyrese or whatever it was yesterday, and he's talking about blah 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 blah, and then he was saying, I could barely walk, like before. It's like, dude, what are you talking about? You could barely walk. You could barely walk, really? You could barely walk. He's listed on the fucking report now with 4 different injuries. Come on, dude. The fucking hamstring, the never-ending hamstring injury. This guy had a hamstring injury for 4 months. Sit the fuck down then. If it's hurting you that much, sit the fuck down. But you know why he didn't? He said it openly. Because he's worried about his All-NBA eligibility. Okay, that's your choice. That's not mine. I don't got to worry about it. If that's what matters to you, so be it. I don't want to hear a fucking sob story. And now his hamstring's healthy, right? So I don't I'm just sick of honestly, very particularly, I'm sick of Tyrese Haliburton's bullshit. And I think he is bullshitting. And I think anybody that wants to keep giving him the benefit of the doubt is a fucking idiot and a moron and should probably get a lobotomy and not donate their brain to science, because nobody needs anybody that stupid in society.
I mean, I think we've known this, right? The whole, he wanted to go to Sacramento, and then he played up the narrative of getting passed on.
But there are people that were still there are objective people. Like after game 2, I was listening to podcasts and oh man, well if this is what Tyrese is, then what can Indiana do? I'm like, did we watch the same game? Because in the first half of that game, he's flying around, zipping around up the floor, kicking the ball out, throwing it to Miles Turner, running a dribble handoff with him. He looks fine. He's looked fucking physically fine for months now. It has nothing to do with an injury. It has nothing to do with that. Maybe it's a mental part of it. Maybe that's real, and I can accept that. That is a real thing, especially when you're coming off a hamstring. You may not want to push yourself because it's hard. It's very hard, and that's something that I'm sure that OG, if he does come back, we'll see it. We will see it. There's no way to avoid it. You have to get comfortable and confident in being able to push off. I get that. And maybe he doesn't trust himself in the paint for that reason. Haliburton, I'm talking about. Maybe that's why he doesn't want to take, try to create too much space with his side steps because he doesn't trust. That's real. That's fine. I can accept that. But that's not the same thing as being injured. He's not fucking injured. Watch him play. Look at him. Does he look slow to you? Does he look like his burst is compromised in any fucking way? Does it look like no?
Maybe he's just that much of a warrior.
Yeah, no, maybe that's what it is. But I mean, come on. I mean, and then he gets fucking pushed in the back. Really? Oh, everybody knows that he's been. I didn't know. I had no fucking idea he was listed with a sore back until 3 minutes before game 1. I was like, what? He has a sore back? This has been a thing? When did this happen? It's just it's disingenuous. It's bullshit. And honestly, I'm just gonna say it's fucking cowardly and it's soft. Is what it is. This guy's been listed on the fucking injury report, questionable with this fucking this back thing for 8 games in a row. He's played every single one. Buddy, is it questionable? Is it? Or are you going to play? Or do you want to have a built-in excuse if you play like shit? That's what it looks like to me. And that's what it is. That is what it is. That's 100% what it is. He wants a built-in excuse, and he's got it. Because if he has a bad game, we're going to hear it. Oh, it's just amazing that he's even playing through this. But no, Jalen Brunson, last 2 games. Oh, Aaron Nesmith, the fucking Brunson stopper. Oh, look at this masterful adjustment that Rick Carlisle has made, and he's locking down Jalen Brunson. And it's oh, okay. So when Brunson struggles, he just struggles. But when Haliburton struggles, oh, his hamstring. Oh my God, his lower back. Oh, he stubbed his toe yesterday coming out of the shower. It's bullshit. I'm sorry. That's what pisses me off. No, literally nothing else. You can talk shit. Talk shit. Fine. Whatever. I won't begrudge them that they won the series. they outplayed us yesterday. And yeah, do I think that like there's a critical mass occurring for the Knicks now where there's just so many injuries they've been dealing with for months on end, that it's built up and guys are reaching close to like their breaking points? Yeah, that's possible. But at the end of the day, you have to take advantage of your opponents. You have to take advantage of their injuries, whatever adversity they're facing. And Indiana did that, and they capitalized it and didn't give us room to breathe. So you have to give them credit for that. That doesn't piss me off. That's literally basketball. And if they make the conference finals, like, I mean, I talked about this with Sam yesterday in the post game. It wouldn't mean to me that like I don't think you need to downplay what they did. Like they still made it to the conference finals, but I think you would objectively look at their path, assuming that they played Boston, and I'm assuming Boston would smoke them. I think you would look at that path and probably be like, all right, like they're a good team, but they're probably not the level of team that a conference finals run necessarily proves to you. And obviously, and to be completely clear, I don't think this version of the Knicks, if they make the conference finals, to me, like the reason for optimism Knicks fans would have moving into the next season isn't because just, oh, we made the conference finals. It would be like, well, we made the conference finals dealing with Randall being out for the year, OG missing X games, Mitch missing X games, Bogey going down in the middle of the first round when it seemed like he was finally starting to get it together. Like, so those are the reasons for optimism.
And you have the flexibility to continue to add, right?
And Indiana would have similar optimism where, well, look, if you look at it honestly, I think objectively you'd look at it and be like, all right, they're good, but they're not like a championship contender, but they have the flexibility to make moves. That's not a bad situation to be in at all. I'm not saying that. But like, so that part, like none of that annoys me. It's just very specifically the entire bullshit, and it's complete and utter fucking bullshit. The conversation around Tyrese Haliburton. I'm so sick of him, and I'm so sick of every fucking excuse that he gets, and I'm so sick of being told how fucking fun he is and how we have to root for him because he's doing it in a small market. Who the fuck cares what market he's doing it in? He could be doing it in fucking
Guangdong.
Moscow for all I give a shit about, and it would not affect how I view what he's doing. Like it is an absolute fucking joke the way he's talked about and the way he's discussed and the way that he gets a fucking excuse every fucking time. Oh, well, it's just hard because people are yelling at me because they're putting me in parlays, and nobody wants to hear this shit, dude. Like, I'm sorry, I don't feel bad for you. Oh, people are yelling at you because they gambled on you? Tough shit, dude. They do that with every player probably in the NBA. And also, again, to quote Don Draper, that's what the money is for. Shut the fuck up. I do not want to hear it. You're going to get paid either $40 million a year or $50 million a year, depending on whether you make All-NBA for the next 5 years. Shut the fuck up about your sob story, you fucking coward piece of shit. Fuck him.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's something particularly grating just about the discussion around him. He's obviously a talented player. But yeah, I mean, I think it's also it is the whole conversation.
That's the other part of it. He is a good player. He's a talented player. So why do we need to make all these excuses for him? If he's a star player, then treat him like a star.
And I'll tell you what, no one is making excuses for Brunson right now. Not in the media. I've already seen the narrative flip now again, right? I saw someone who was like, people actually thought Brunson was better than Donovan Mitchell, which is like, buddy, it's 2 games.
I mean, he beat Donovan Mitchell twice in 2 straight years.
And has gotten way better. And that's we even said this. I don't think that's an interesting conversation, but I do think like it's insane to act like Mitchell is better or head and shoulders better. I do want to point out to kind of what you were saying with, even if they make the Eastern Conference Finals, you're still feeling like this version, probably needs a little bit more, and that could be already on the roster with Randall and all that. But I do think it's, we were seeing that, in the Discord and everything, if you're discussing things like what kind of moves they can make, and there's people like, look, they're having so much success. We just beat Philly in 6 games. We're up. Why are we talking about I wouldn't want to trade, Dante. I wouldn't want to move any of these guys. And I think what maybe to yesterday also kind of shows is the Knicks are a very clutch team. I don't want to say that they didn't deserve to win those games, but long term, I don't know that you can just say we won so many games right at the wire. Again, without certain guys, sure, and that's a reason to just run it back, right? I think a move, unless they were to win or get to the finals, and put up a solid fight, I don't see them just running it back. Because one, injuries are always going to happen, right? So you do want to continue to build depth. You also are seeing that even if you're healthy, you're putting a ton on Jalen Brunson. And I think we are aligned on that, but curious to your thoughts there. I mean, you have to expect them to make some kind of move, and likely a pretty big move this summer, right?
Maybe. I don't know. I think that they could look at this team and be like, well, we were the best team in basketball in January. Do we really need to do anything? I don't know. I don't think that's is that insane? I don't know. I genuinely don't know. I don't think it's that crazy to just be like, yeah, let's work on, I think it's reasonable to look at this team and be like, all right, we saw what the starting five looks like. We know that Josh Hart will move back to the bench, which makes our bench stronger. We know that Dante, he was only even playing 23 or 24 minutes a game during that month. But we know obviously he's taken a leap since then. I think he already kind of shown that he was trending in the right direction prior to that anyway. He was really playing well off of Randall. So not too worried about that part. But so that I think you'd have more confidence in Deuce going into next season. Personally, I think that he's pretty close to making a leap right now. He's shown I know that it's hard to see because it's hard because you want to win these games. These are meaningful games, right, in the playoffs, do or die games in a lot of ways. And his struggles, the things he still struggles with, pop, and they cost you in the margins, and that hurts. But I think that I'm very encouraged by the fact that he's shown a really, he's way more confident driving left than he is to his right. I'm not sure what that's about. I wonder if he's a lefty in something.
I think pull-ups can be a lot easier going left, right? If you're a righty,
right? But he's better driving. He's better finishing on his left. He his best finishes come when he drives left. So that part is interesting to me. I just wonder if maybe he's ambidextrous in some ways.
No, but I'm saying he might have, because he's been a pull-up first guy most of his career. If you're always going left to get to that pull-up, and then so you just might have more reps going left like that, right, and finishing. Because when they take away the pull-up, then you do have to attack the rim, right?
Maybe. I just have never seen somebody that
inverse to what you'd expect.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't remember somebody who is a right-handed player being so. I guess Ja's the one guy I can think of who is clearly much more comfortable driving left than right, but he's not a great pull-up shooter. So that's just maybe a really strange quirk. But anyway, the point is I think he's clearly showing more willingness to do stuff off the bounce. Doesn't always work out. I think he's still ironing out what's a good shot, what's an acceptable shot, what is he good at, all those type of things. But I don't know. I think that you can anyway. I think the Knicks can look at him and be like, we feel much better about him coming into next season. So now you look at the roster and you're like, okay, well, we have Bogey. Is that somebody we believe in, or is that a contract now we can use again in trade? Maybe you attach one of those protected first or one of our first this year to get a player in that you like, that you feel more confident in to replace him. And that gives you better solidity. Maybe you, and the other part is let's say you're like, hey, we're way less concerned about Mitch getting hurt coming off the bench than we are with him as a starter. So now you solidified your bench, right, with bringing Mitch there. And so, like, I just think that there's plenty of opportunity for them to look at this team as is and feel like maybe we don't need to do something major. Now, I don't know that I don't feel really strongly one way or the other. To me, everything should be judged as like in the light of what it is specifically. So, like, every move should be judged on the merits of its own. I don't think they should write off making a big move. I don't think they should write off a big move not being worth what it would take to make it happen. I think the dumbest thing or the worst thing you can always do is feel pressure to make a move. I think
But hasn't the conversation changed a little bit with Brunson being this level of superstar? Because you mentioned it yourself, you're always trying to win the title.
But the team they were was like showing they were a title caliber team.
For a short, I mean, it was 14 games. And I think the other point I'm making is that
that's 20% of the season almost.
Yeah, but I mean, the schedule opened up a little bit. I don't think teams make a decision.
Denver.
I think it was
they smoked Denver. They beat the Timberwolves and they smoked the Sixers.
Yeah, but they also won a lot of games in there against.
Right, but they smoked good teams. The two losses they had were at Dallas, a dumb game they lost, which they did not show up to start the first half of that game. And they still had a chance to win that. They probably should have won it, to be honest. And then the other game. No, the other game they lost was in January. The other game they lost was off the top of my head. I'm pretty sure it was to Orlando, and that was a game Brunson set.
Yeah. Okay. I thought you were counting just after the trade, but
no.
The point is for me, like that is it's an important sample. You can definitely be encouraged by it, and you don't feel the need to be pressured into any kind of move. Looking at the playoffs and saying, look, they made the second round. The margins being this tight, I think, is a little bit. People are taking a little bit into too much into it. Yeah, this is a team that's built to win close games, but I don't think that means you say, well, that's okay. We can just keep grinding out, because you're seeing kind of some of the toll that takes. And so that's what I think, that nothing should be off the table. I think that's correct. But I do think you have to treat this team as they have a no doubt about it superstar. And I think where I'm a little bit, it's funny. I think I was higher on Deuce than a lot of people when the ball wasn't going in, because I believed in his jump shot since he was in college. He has the form looks good. It's Prez certified. And if Prez says somebody can shoot, it's usually something I'll believe. But I'm struggling, I guess, to see it a little bit with him being like a viable bench creator. Now, maybe Randall going to the bench and playing with this version of Deuce is enough to make that a viable lineup. But even during that stretch, you saw that the bench creation wasn't there with Brunson sitting. So I would imagine they tried to do something to either to give Deuce a co-star, like a vet who can kind of help steady the ship. I think of all the things that went poorly, I do think, like, if Burks is actually hitting open shots and playing a little bit smarter, it does take some pressure off of Deuce, right? But I guess I'm not sold that he's going to turn into this viable point guard. I think he's best as like a DeAnthony Melton type, which is an extremely valuable player. But I do think that still is a need that they'll have to address, either, with just getting a vet who can kind of steady the ship next to him, or, maybe more of a polished point guard in the draft. And again, with Deuce shooting like this, you don't need that guy to be a high level shooter necessarily either.
Yeah, I mean, you have veteran options like Kyle Lowry, somebody who will be a free agent. I'm not really sure. I wouldn't mind just adding him, because he's still, to me, like a good player. But
Conley's the guy that keeps coming to mind as like Conley on this team next to Deuce. I would really like that. I don't know if he's available. I don't think he would be.
No, they extended him. He's staying.
But I mean, that's the type of player I'm thinking of, I guess, if you're just going to try to upgrade the bench.
Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily know who that is. But it certainly they need somebody else who can create off the dribble. And I agree. I like Deuce, to me, his creation jump, if it happens is more as like it's still more to me as an off-ball combo guard than like I guess the best way I can put it is while if you want to like quibble over whether Quickly is a point guard or is Deuce a point guard, the best way I would put it is that Quickly, if he's not a point guard, he's more of an on-ball combo guard. Whereas to me, Deuce is way more of an off-ball combo guard. Like they can both do the other thing, but they're better at one than the other. Like Quickly to me is better on ball now than he is off ball, and he's still really good. He's a great off-ball player, but he's better on it. He's better being involved with the ball in his hands or at least touching it. Whereas Deuce to me is at his best when he's playing off of anybody else's creation, which is fine. Like he still has the ability, he's shown that he can now attack a closeout, get into that mid range. He's shown that in a pinch, he can create in a pick and roll. Like those are good things to have, but he's not really somebody you want to ask to do that consistently. So getting somebody else who can create is definitely, especially very specifically at that guard position, like breaking down a defense, running a pick and roll, running a steady stream of pick and rolls even. That's something that they need to add. I don't know who that guy is. Like Kyle Lowry probably isn't that guy anymore, even though he's still valuable in a lot of ways.
Tyus Jones.
Tyus Jones is not. He's not going to sign with the Knicks.
Well, I mean, if it's a situation where Washington signs him because they don't really have a choice, but they eventually trade him.
Yeah, maybe you could do that, but I don't think he would be very happy about it. And also, I think he's been a pretty poor playoff player, if I remember correctly.
I
haven't looked at his numbers in a while, but I remember that being a thing. So I don't know who it is they can go get. I mean, luckily it's not my problem either. But
do you think Deuce can evolve? Do you think Deuce has evolved enough on ball to play next to Randall, or to make that more viable to give Randall an outlet as opposed to just having to carry the bench?
No, I think you need somebody who's actually capable of like running the offense to get the best out of Randall, and that's part of Randall's own limitations. Where I know those bench minutes, I think they won them actually on aggregate, but a lot of that had to do with their defense being pretty solid. I'm not sure that is nearly as effective when in a playoff situation. I don't know that formula is nearly as effective. So I'm not sure. Again, I don't know who it is that they would get. Finding quality bench guards is actually very difficult, and that's generally why your stars need to be able to buoy bench lineups. So we'll see how that works. I don't know who it would be. And the number of guys who get like this is why somebody like Caruso to me would be very beneficial, because he's not obviously some dynamic like creator type, but he's somebody I would feel very confident to just be like, hey, we need you to run the offense for like, fucking 6 minutes a half when Brunson sits. I would feel very confident with that. Obviously, we know he could play with Brunson, right? He can play off of Brunson. I think him and Deuce would be fine. I think they'd be really good together.
Certainly on defense.
Yeah, they'd definitely be great together on defense. Even offensively, I think Caruso's more capable of just running the offense, getting into the paint a little bit, and then, Deuce obviously can play off of that. I would be fine with that. Like that's probably the ideal guy that you go after. Obviously, I think we've kind of jokingly talked about it, but I don't like if you could get DJ McConnell, that'd be great. I have no idea what Indiana would let him go. I don't think they will let him go. So that's something to consider. But like, yeah, I mean, if that is what you like, to me, Caruso is a guy. If you can get him,
would you have concerns about Caruso if Hart is moving back to the bench? Would you have any concerns about spacing there, given that neither of them is? I mean, Caruso hits his shots, but it's not a very high volume, right? It's 4 attempts a game, I believe.
I don't remember what it was this year, but it was.
I think he had 40% of his threes this year, but it was just like 4.4 attempts per game. And for his career, he's an accurate. It's a little bit like McConnell, right, where you don't want to leave him open, but.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. He's not a high volume 3-point shooter, but again, you're talking about bench minutes, and there's always ways to like. There's always ways to.
Yeah, so 41% from 3 on 4.7 attempts per game. So with Hart already there, that's why it's a little bit more concerning. But Hart's shown the willingness to put up shots, and yeah, to your point, maybe you have OG play with that unit and bring him out a little bit early, especially if you're already fine with Hart playing there at the 3.
You always just have like a greater margin for error with your bench guys, right? Like when you're playing bench versus bench, guys are bench players because they're not as good as starters, generally speaking. Like that's usually the logic around the league. So if your bench has flaws, that's not atypical. That's typical. What you really want are pieces that can mix and match and give you combinations and blend in with your starters. And like, obviously Deuce can do that. Obviously Josh Hart can do that. Obviously, Mitchell Robinson in his own way, assuming he's back and he was the backup center, he would be able to do that, right? We know that he can play with the starters. And then we know, like, I think Caruso could easily do that. Well, would there be situations or combinations you don't ideally want to use? Probably. It's on Thibs to figure out what those combinations are. But there'd also be combinations where he'd probably be fucking awesome. Like there would definitely be games where you'd be like, hey, Dante doesn't have it tonight. Let's play with Caruso next to Brunson. You know what I mean? Like there are just different combinations that he could fit in that I think that's really what you want from your bench guys. That's kind of why I thought Bogey was an interesting addition, because he has the versatility to fit in with different guys at the 4 or 3 or whatever. And unfortunately we didn't get to see that for too much. He struggled in the regular season. And then once he kind of started to figure it out, it was like, oh, you're injured now. Sorry. So that part is tough. But yeah, I still think there's a viable path to just like not doing anything crazy, largely running it back, try to make an impact move or two, and move from there. But we'll have to see what the Knicks choose to do. I mean, there's obviously an argument, to your point, of making a more significant move. Wouldn't surprise me if that's what they chose, because they are really good. And I do think that they feel some level of urgency with Brunson there. But I think you can feel a sense of urgency, but not feel like the move that you need, the move that you want to make, the move that makes sense to make is available yet. So, yeah, that's kind of where I stand on that.
Yeah. But obviously the Knicks are still playing a series. We talked about kind of the moving Precious out of starting lineup. We'll see, what continues to happen with Burks. Do you think that, obviously in previous games, they really hunted Haliburton, and there's this talking point, which I think is a little bit overstated. It seems like Brunson is just getting the same shots, and those are shots that, look, that we've come to expect him to be brilliant from mid-range all the time, but particularly with an injury, it can be a little bit more difficult. Do you think there's other things the Knicks can try or did try maybe in previous games that they didn't do yesterday that you'd expect them to go back to free up Brunson a little bit more beyond, the lineups and all that?
I'm sorry, will they mismatch on Haliburton, you're saying?
Or other ways to kind of, do they need to get Nesmith off Brunson more? Are there things that you either saw them do previously or that they can do in general?
I mean, I would say this. I would venture to guess that Nesmith will get... He was allowed to be more physical with Brunson in games 3 and 4 than I think he was at the Garden. I expect a similar trend to occur where he's not able to get away with physicality as much on Brunson in game 5. So he will be off of him more. I think they could probably try to do more stuff to get him off of Brunson, but it's also hard because it's the playoffs. They're going to let you grab and hold a little bit more so you can stay attached easier. They've got to find ways to attack that. And again, like, to me, the biggest thing is, and this is why I did not like sticking with Burks over Deuce during that fourth quarter in game 3, because they kept trying to use Burks as the screener because they wanted to bring, I think it was Haliburton who was on him, into the action. And so ideally what you want is either you get a switch or they have to show 2 to the ball and then, Burks gets an open shot or he has a lane to attack. To me, Deuce is better at that. He's a better screener. He has he's developed a chemistry with Brunson as a screener. Like we talk about this with big men and guards all the time, right? Where pick and roll is kind of like this coordinated dance between the two of them, and they have to, you have to get an understanding of what your partner likes to do. Like Deuce and Brunson have built that up. Burks and Brunson, they've never played together. They've barely ever played together. So how would they have that chemistry? I think that was a mistake. And But yeah, like I think you need to mix up the screeners on Brunson, and to his credit, I think they've actually done that pretty consistently through this series. So yeah.
So you I think are pretty optimistic about Game 5 and the rest of the series. Obviously going back to friendly confines, they have home court advantage. Is there anything in particular you expect to see Game 5 or your particular reasons for optimism beyond the team's just track record?
They'll be at home. I feel like that's pretty significant. I don't know. They're 4-1 at home in the playoffs. They were 4-1 last year at home in the playoffs. They're 8-2 in the last 2 seasons under Thibs in the playoffs. There, I know they were 1-2 his first year. I don't really put much stock into that first playoff run. That team was so very much nowhere near as talented. Yeah, they're just nowhere near as talented as these last years. And in retrospect, we probably should have been like, all right, well, it's cool getting here. Let's move on. And look, Randall, if there's something you could do. If Randall plays like shit, I'm not going to put like, well, yeah, that's just what it is. What it is. There's no way to, and with the talent we had on that team, there's no way to overcome that. It's just not possible. With the last year's team, obviously, I think that's a better indication of where we are now. Obviously, this year's record is a better indicator of where we are now. But even last year's team, obviously, they have a better indicator as well. And look, I just think
they only lost once in the playoffs as well, right?
At home.
At home, yeah.
And look, I think that sometimes you get your ass beat. It's not the worst thing in the world. It can light a fire under your ass. And I'm not saying, and like, you might not, like, I don't think these guys need added motivation, but it's always kind of stupid, right? When it's like, well, like, I know that Brunson has to say this stuff because that's just how he's wired, where he's like, well, if you need more motivation in the playoffs, I don't really know what you're doing. But like, it doesn't hurt to have more motivation. Never hurts to have more. Never hurts to have more haters in your life and have people to respond to. I don't know. I have a good feeling about Game 5. I'll say that. That's it. Like, I couldn't tell you what it is because logically, you look at the teams. One team is dealing with, they basically have 6.5 guys, 7 guys. We want to be generous. The other has their full complement of players. I know that Tyrese Haliburton has overcome so much, and hopefully he can make it through his super serious injuries, and maybe he'll be able to walk with the ankle he has.
Well, I saw someone compare the Pacers missing Mathurin to
we don't need to compare idiots to anything. So yeah, I mean, clearly that's ridiculous. Mathurin was also just not a good player this season, which is fine. He's a second-year player who's really talented, but doesn't make him good right now at NBA basketball. But like, yeah, on paper it should be the Pacers all the way, but I feel like you're going to get a pretty awesome crowd tomorrow. I think these guys will have a fire lit under their ass by Thibs. And I think they're pissed. I think they're pissed they lost Game 3, obviously, the way they lost it. And I think they know they got embarrassed yesterday. They got embarrassed yesterday, like flat out. Whatever we want to say, fatigue, shorthandedness, whatever. You lost by 32 points on the road in a playoff game. Like, the fucking game was a 5.5 point spread. You know what I mean? Like, this, you got beat down. I think they'll be pissed. I think they'll be pissed, and I think they'll want to show that what they like, that Game 5 is not, or that Game 4 rather, is not who we are. We're a different team. We're the team that you've seen all year. So this is not like a number. I mean, if you want the numbers-based approach, it would be this. It would be, I think, so far in the series. 1 second, let me pull it up. All right, let's see. So far in this series, the Knicks are shooting a very nice still, 39.3% from 3. They fell 10 percentage points after yesterday's game as a team. They were shooting 49% going in that game yesterday. The Pacers are shooting 41.5% from 3. I think they are due for a little bit of regression. Haliburton shooting 45.2% from 3 all of a sudden. So his hamstring magically recovered in time. Congrats to him. What a guy. Miles Turner, he's shooting 44% from 3. TJ McConnell, he's only taken 5, but he's shooting 40%. Obi Toppin is shooting 54.5% from three. Only attempted 11, but still, like, I think they haven't had a bad shooting game in this series yet. At some point, you would think like they'll just have a bad shooting game just because you will have a bad shooting game. Nature of the playoffs. I think to me the key of this game is, can the Knicks get out on them early, and then can they hold the fucking lead for once? Like, we've seen them get out to leads a few times, right? In Game 6 against Philly, and then in Game 2 against Indiana. Granted, Game 2 against Indiana had some extenuating circumstances with, Brunson going out, and then which is a very bizarre game. But like, I think I feel good about them. I feel good about them, and I also feel good that Thibs is not going to start Precious at the 4. I feel very, very good about that. I think I took him starting Deuce to start that second half as an understanding of like, all right, this is just not, the Precious thing is not working. Let me use, and I think he used that second half to try shit, get a look at lineups that he knows and probably will need to use in this game. Like, I know there were people that were mad that Brunson was in the game as long as he was in the third quarter. I think he wanted to get a look at that lineup. I think it was Brunson, Dante, Deuce, Burks, and Precious. I think he wanted to get a look at that. And that lineup, I mean, look, the competitive portion of that game was over, but I thought you could see how that would work offensively. That was promising. Defensively on the glass, obviously you're going to have some issues, but you're trying to figure out trade-offs, right? And so I thought he used that third quarter kind of well to explore a few different things.
Do you think there's any way? I mean, I don't know how closely you watch Garbage Time. Is there any way he expands to like 8 guys or plays someone like a Daquan Jeffries or someone?
Why?
Well, I mean,
he didn't play Daquan Jeffries when we had like 7 guys in the regular season. There's no fucking shot he's playing this guy in the playoffs, man.
Yeah, I mean, I would tend to agree. I just if there are any takeaways from Garbage Time, I do think it's worth talking about this. It's a conversation I don't particularly enjoy, but you do see people now going back to the narrative that, well, they're kind of getting what happens when you play guys a ton of minutes in the regular season. So I think no one ranked in the top 10 on the Knicks in regular season minutes. Brunson and Randall, I believe, were tied for 15th. Obviously, Brunson was playing through the injury. But, in a minutes per game situation, and this has been the running theme, right? Everyone criticized all the Randall minutes. And to be clear, I was critical of how many minutes Randall was getting in 2021, 22, but that was more from the standpoint of he just wasn't giving effort often on defense, and it just was more of an accountability thing. But, obviously in the past, in Chicago, they've had injury-riddled teams, and, people feel like, other teams will play their end of the bench guys to withstand the attrition and all of that. I know you've always been kind of not a Thibs minutes police guy. And I guess what would you say to that, especially when people will bring up that, this is not a isolated year where the Knicks or where Thibs team has had a lot of injuries.
Randall and OG's injuries have nothing okay, if you want to use the hamstring for OG, sure. But the reason OG missed out initially had nothing to do with Thibs. Randall's injury has nothing to do with Thibs. Mitch Robinson's injury has nothing to do with minutes or Thibs. That's
Brunson?
So we were going to sit Brunson?
Well, so the other teams might play an end of the bench guy, right? Or might live with those more, and you lose a game or two more, but you have fewer injuries. That would be the argument.
I mean, there's so many hypotheticals here that I just don't really know what to do with it. Like, I think if Thibs had a guard or another creator that could at least buoy the offense to a decent level, he would play Brunson less. Like, if we had Quickly still, and Quickly was in the playoffs and had gotten over whatever his issues were in the playoffs, I guarantee you Brunson plays less. I'm positive Brunson plays less. And you know what? Even if he played the same amount, his minutes would be different. They would have less pressure on him because he'd get better looks.
There's Hart, they're obviously tired and all of that. You don't think there's anything? Do you think that Thibs has mismanaged the long game? I guess either in the playoffs or regular season, given Because in the playoffs, the minutes have been very high, right, for relative to other teams.
I mean, were they that much higher than like the shit that Nurse was doing with the
He played
Sixers?
Embiid the entire second half, one game. I know that.
Like I think people just what are we like? Are we trying to win the games? Are we trying to like? How are we treating the playoffs? Are we trying to get? Are we treating the playoffs like we want to manage everybody's minutes and make sure that we get through? Like, I don't get that. They don't have the luxury the Celtics have. They don't have the luxury that. I mean,
every other team basically has.
Not every other team, but it's like, you know, Indiana right now they have better depth than us because their guys are healthy. It's that simple. Like it really is that fucking simple right now. I'm just looking at this box score yesterday from Denver, Minnesota. This is just Denver, Minnesota, right? Gordon played 41 minutes. Jokic played 39. That was only because of foul trouble. He would have played more than that. Murray played 39. Minnesota, okay? Anthony Edwards, 45 minutes. Karl Anthony Towns, 38 minutes. Jaden McDaniels, 38 minutes. Rudy Gobert, 35. Is that really that much different than what Thibs has been doing? Like, really? Like, I get the Josh Hart thing is crazy, but is that really that much different? And wouldn't you say, like, look, if Thibs had Naz Reid on his bench and Nickeil Alexander-Walker, maybe he'd give guys less minutes too, because he could be like, oh, you know what? Naz can play some 4, so I don't need to play OG that much. Oh, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, I like him. He can play 2, 3, 1, whatever. I can buy Brunson some minutes. I can buy Dante some minutes. I can buy Josh Hart some minutes. Like, he doesn't have those guys on his bench right now. I don't know. I would imagine if you went through the first 3 or 4 games of the playoffs where the Knicks got totally hurt, that the minutes look different aside from Josh Hart. I mean, I think if you looked at OG's minutes, I did this the other day, actually. I can just pull up this game log right now. But if you look at OG's game logs, so if we go all the way to the playoffs and this is his minutes, the first 4 games, okay? 31-28, 36-30, 39-21, 46-48. Then he plays 50-20 in an overtime game in game 5 against Philly. And then he plays 45-15 in game 6, closeout game against Philly. I don't think I really just don't think that's that crazy. I don't, given the fact that Bogdanovich got hurt. Bogdanovich gets hurt in game 4.
And it's not like that was a minutes related thing.
No, he gets hurt literally like 20 seconds into his stint. So he's done. So at that point, your option is like, all right, let me get Burks in. And Burks, yeah, granted, he's played fine. He's played pretty okay last couple of games here. I mean, he played flat out really well in game 3, I thought. But like, that's just, I'm sorry. I have a tough time accepting this stuff. Like, you know, and even I think Dante DiVincenzo, if you look at his minutes in the first 5-6 games of that Sixers series, I'm pretty sure he had his minutes cut drastically. So like, if this is game log for just the Sixers series, okay? 24-38, 24-28, 37-14, 28-18, 28-11, 25-40, and then all 48 in the closeout game. Is that crazy? Really? Is that crazy? Like, I don't see it. I'm sorry. I don't see it. This is Brunson's game log for that series. Sorry, one second. Brunson game log. 41-19, 37-56, 45-25, 43-32, 50-51, 43-36. And yeah, that is crazy. That is pretty crazy. But you know what? They literally can't exist without Brunson on the floor half the time. Like, their offense just goes to shit. We saw this in game 2 against Indiana, right? Like, as soon as Brunson sat, we got destroyed. And then when he played, they were like a plus 28 or something in those minutes. I don't know. I just, the minutes thing to me it is what it is, man. People are going to bitch about it forever. I don't know. I just struggle to really, I mean, like, look, Mitchell Robinson, for example. I'm going to read all of his minutes since he returned from injury. So he came back on March 27th. He played 10 regular season games, and then he played 6 playoff games. These are just the minutes. I'm going to read it down from the start. 12-26, 19-39, 10:08, 15:24, 11:06, 19:09, 19:39, 14:47, 25:02, 7:26. Then in the playoffs, 30:21, 17:41, 11:58, 25:06, 17:46, 11:47. I mean, is he fucking running Mitchell Robinson to the ground there? Like, I mean, I don't. Again, I can. It's a pretty boring exercise, but I can go through. Here's Isaiah Hartenstein for the playoffs. 17:30, 17:30, 17:39, 30:18, 25:51, 28:14, 26:34, 29:52, 36:01, 39:03, 38:35, 21:39. So, like, to me, it looks like he pushed Hartenstein for the first 3 games of the series. Hartenstein paid the price yesterday. He didn't have it. But for the most of the playoffs, he's been at 30. He had one 30-minute game prior to the series, and that was a 30-minute, 18-second game against Philly in game 2. Aside from that, he's been under 30 in every game. He was even under 20 in game 1 against Philly. So, like, I don't know. I don't know what to do with the minutes thing. I think it's kind of disingenuous given the injuries we had, the fact that the majority of those injuries, the regular season injuries, had nothing to do with minutes management. And then blaming him kind of for, like, the current spate of injuries, which, yeah, I mean, I do think the OG thing is probably fatigue related, but I don't know what you really want him to do because you're trying to win, right? Like, it's the playoffs. You're not trying to just, this is not, like, if this was a stretch of games in fucking February, I'd agree.
But he doesn't do that normally in February, right?
Yeah, that's my point. Is like his minutes for his players, if you look at him over the last, his top minutes, guys, it's pretty normal. Pretty fucking normal.
Yeah, and obviously yesterday, but every team has had a blowout. So Brunson in minutes per game is actually 9th. He's in the playoffs. So to the point we made earlier, number 2 in minutes per game is Josh Hart. But Brunson, their star, is only 9th, and he's tied with 39-year-old LeBron James. So he played the same number of minutes per game as 39-year-old LeBron James. Yeah, I mean, I think, I think it's a tough. I think people, from a Knicks fan standpoint, I get the frustration and wanting something to blame. I've probably been guilty of that in the past. I probably overstated at the time, how much not starting Elfrid Payton could have helped them maybe win that series.
I mean, dude, this minutes leader stuff is hilarious, actually, if you look at the list. Number 1 is Tyrese Maxey. Played 44.5 minutes per game. And like, oh, Nick Nurse just killing Tyrese Maxey out here. Kevin Durant, famously extremely never injured and very young. Kevin Durant.
This is for the playoffs only, by the way, right?
Yeah, 42 minutes per game. Luka Doncic, who's injured, by the way, playing on a knee that everybody is like, oh my God, this guy is warrior. But I do give him credit. He's playing through it for sure. 41.9 minutes. Anthony Davis, the ever strong,
durable,
definitely never hurt, durable Anthony Davis, 41.6 minutes. Devin Booker, 41.5 minutes. Joel Embiid is averaging more minutes in the playoffs than Jalen Brunson, 41.3. Yeah, like, I mean, even OG is 12th. He's at 40 minutes a game. James fucking Harden was averaging more minutes than him at 40.3. Anthony Edwards is averaging the same minutes as OG Anunoby. Do you think Anthony Edwards is going to die soon? Are we worried? Kyrie Irving, another an Iron Man of yesteryear, 39.9 minutes per game. Nikola Jokic, who is 7 foot, 350 pounds or something, 39.9 minutes. Like,
Dame was hurt and played 39.1.
Yeah, the minute stuff is just, it's bullshit, dude. It is bullshit. So the Knicks have 3 guys in the top. I'm waiting until I find the 4th here. In the top 34. The 35th is DiVincenzo at 35.5. That is just not that abnormal. I'm sorry. It's not.
I have to agree. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a way one to kind of discredit the Knicks, I think, nationally. And I think I get it from Knicks fans who they're frustrated and you want something to blame, right? As a Bears fan, I get it. But yeah.
I mean, the reality, too, is, like, if Randall was healthy, OG's minutes would go down, Hart's minutes would go down. Like, it would solve itself. Randall getting hurt is really the big – it hurts because they don't have a lot of guys that Thibs feel – the only guys that you feel comfortable playing the 4 right, are OG, Hart, who isn't really a 4, but can because he just is a psycho, and then Precious, who can like play the 4 but isn't good at the 4. So I don't know. Like those are his options, and I'm sorry. I'm not going to kill him for not playing Precious at the 4 against Philly. I'm not going to do it.
Does it make you regret trading Obi Toppin for 2 second round picks? How you?
No, it will never make me regret that. It's a funny trade. Happy for Obi that he's in a good situation for him, though.
Yeah, he's playing well. With Randall, I want to get back to that because something I've seen a lot of people say is, well, maybe they're better off without Randall, right? And all of that, right? Or even using it as like maybe this makes you more willing to part with Randall in the off season, right? Or you don't need to trade him for a star. But you just mentioned, obviously he's very important. I think I think it's fair to say that like just his ability to absorb minutes is big. DJ from Knicks Film School posted. I mean, he's been kind of tooting this horn for a long time when we're at the regular season. But Brunson is an elite catch and shoot player. Those attempts have dried up. I think according to the stats, these playoffs, DJ posted 78% of Brunson's threes have been pull-ups. He's shooting below 30% from those. But as per usual, he's shooting upper 40s and like 47% on catch and shoot. So to me, that really screams to the importance of Randall because I just don't have other viable creators. So I'm curious. I've always found like if you want to say we've had the conversation a lot. Can he be on this roster when they win a championship, or are there better fits or whatever? That's one thing. But I think the idea that this iteration of the Knicks is better without Randall, to me, has seemed ridiculous for a long time.
Anybody who thinks this team is better off without Randall, like, if you believe they're better off without Randall because you're worried about him in the playoffs, I get that. I think that's reasonable. What I think
that's the idea the ball moves more and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's all. Well, I get all that, and I've argued for that. I think that's a genuine concern with the decision the Knicks will have to make in terms of should they bring Randall back? Does he need an extension, et cetera, et cetera? I get all that, and I appreciate it. And I think that's a nuanced discussion that deserves its own time of the time in the sun. And it'll happen. I'm sure we'll talk about that when the offseason comes, and I'm sure the Knicks they're probably already talking about it, considering it, whatever. What I think is really disingenuous and bullshit about the Randall discussion is we're not just talking about the playoffs. Like, this is what is so frustrating about this conversation about like, oh, I thought you guys were like super tough, and now like, oh, now it's too much. Now it's, dude, they haven't been playing shorthanded for like the last 2 weeks or the last month. They've been playing shorthanded since the end of January. February, March, April, we're middle of May. That's 3.5 months. They've not had Randall since then. They didn't have OG for what, 2.5 months of that time? I mean, how long did OG play, right? He played like basically a month of games over that time, maybe max. Like, there's a cumulative toll that takes on you, and that look, that's not like there were a couple games Brunson missed in that time. I think he might have missed 1 or 2. Mitchell Robinson missed most of that, and obviously I read the minutes out earlier. He was clearly on a minutes limit when he came back. Like, guys miss time with injuries, and I'm not telling you to write a sob story for us, because if you want to push back, and I think this is a fair counter, is OG and Mitchell Robinson miss games. That's part of what you get with them. That's fair. But the Randall injury to me is the one that really, really added a significant cumulative toll onto this team, because he's a guy that his injuries have all been freak kind of accidents, right? Like last year was the ankle sprain, where Bam kind of had his foot slide underneath Randall. And then this year was the Jaquez play, which you can't legislate for that. And those are freak injuries. They're not muscle strains, right? And they're not recurring. These are not recurring injuries. So that's the one that's really a killer. And that's the one that ramped up the most minutes on guys, because Randall not being out and then OG, of course, being out at the same time meant that you had very, very little depth. And, they tried to address it by getting Bogey and Burks at the deadline. The Burks thing was a dud. It's been nice that he's been playing. He's given us a couple of nice games here in the playoffs, but that was a dud for most of it. He was terrible. I don't know what the hell is going on with him. It wasn't just shot making, it's his decision making. I mean, for his decision making to be what it was in the last two games versus whatever the fuck he was doing in the regular season is pretty stunning to watch. And then Bogdanovich was hurt. Or Bogdanovich, sorry, he got hurt now in the playoffs, but he was not great initially right off the bat when he joined the team. He needed time to adjust. So it was hard to, if you're trying to win games, but then you're trying to get Bogdanovich involved. It's a hard balance to strike. And, could Thibs have done something better? Maybe. I'm never going to say no. Like, he's not perfect. I'll tell you that. But I don't think I didn't come away from this season feeling like, wow, what a crazy thing. And he did Bogdanovich was averaging 20 minutes a game in New York. So it's not like he's at 19.2. So it's not like he wasn't playing. You know what I mean? Like, he was still playing. He gave him minutes. I think he did as best as he could in a tough situation. And this is a team that clearly, internally, I think from the front office down to the coaching staff, down to the players, felt they had a chance to do something this year. And they were hoping that Randall would get back. Obviously, Randall didn't get back. And they were hoping OG would get back. OG got back. But then OG got hurt again. And it's like, when you feel like you have a chance, you owe it to yourself to give yourself that chance. And that means you're going to have to make hard decisions. And some of those decisions might mean, hey, I'm going to need you to play more minutes than I normally would for a month here or 2 months or whatever it is. And they made those choices. If you want to say that they have to reap the consequences of that now, so be it. But I don't think this was down to Thibs, because we also have evidence of Thibs adhering to minutes limits, right? With Hartenstein, with Mitchell Robinson. So if the front office had told him, hey, buddy, and I think he was doing it with Brunson too. Brunson, there's a long stretch of games where Brunson was like not playing more than 35 minutes. That was it. Like, there was, no matter what, he was playing 34 to 35 minutes. So it's not like he can't adhere to a minutes limit. I just don't think he was given one with many of these guys. And so if you want to blame somebody for that, I think then you should probably say the medical staff and the front office should understand who their coach is. And if you're worried about that, the potential burnout down the line, then they need to be more proactive about, hey, buddy, can't play Josh more than 38 minutes. Can't play Dante more than 38 minutes. Figure that out. But aside from that, I don't know. I have a tough time blaming him, not going to lie.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would agree with all of that. I think it's sometimes, I think people are trying to kind of make that. It's been a narrative. A lot of this stuff is a narrative, right? I think it was Paul Pierce who was like, it's like Paul Pierce was saying, oh, well, Thibs makes them practice too hard. That to me has always seemed like nonsense. I think Quickly was talking about it, like he pays more attention to detail. Like at shoot around, he will, he'll probably have, make you do stuff when guys are just trying to chill or whatever. But I think the idea that the Knicks just don't have, the Knicks are getting run into the ground in practice, that seems to be a lot more narrative than what the evidence supports, or frankly, what how you see in line with what you see other teams around the league doing.
What do you mean?
I think that the minutes that he plays, to the point that you made, for his players, is not really out of line with what other coaches are doing, right? What standard.
Yeah, I mean, I would say the one thing he does do, which I don't think I see as much around the league, is like 18 minutes in a row type thing. Like, I think you could, and I think that specifically could be a fair criticism of him, where you're like, hey, like, I don't mind the 44 minutes, but can we break it up a little bit better? Like, can we not do like you're going to play 16 to start the half, then I give you a 2-minute break, and then you come back. Like, it's just that maybe, like, there's stuff that you can point to with that maybe is different. But I agree, like, how the output is not the issue. The output is not the issue, right? You can quibble with the inputs, but the output of how he determines his players' minutes is not some huge outlier in the league at all, really.
Yeah, I'd have to agree.
All right. Unless you have anything else, I think that's a good place to end it. Anything, Bueller? Going once?
No, I think it's a good place to end it.
All right, cool. Stacy, let the people know where they can find you and plug anything you'd like to plug.
You can find me at StacyPadden89, and I'll plug all of the great work done at the Strickland. I think hopefully we'll have a happy recap coming in a couple of days.
Yeah, looking forward to that. I have nothing to plug personally, so I'll plug all the work at the Strickland. Check out the post games, the recaps. Miranda, Jeff dropped one today on a game that I'm sure nobody truly wants to relive, but give it a read. Jeff always does great work with us. So check all that out. Colin dropped a piece last week about OG Anunoby. I think he got hurt shortly thereafter. So if you want to blame somebody, blame Colin. Aside from that, I got nothing. So thank you to everybody for listening. Thank you to our sponsor, Bet Online. And I will see everybody after. I should be on the post game for game 2, so I'll see everybody then. And we have a special guest lined up for episode 400, so definitely looking forward to that. Again, that is our show for today. I hope everybody has a great rest of the week, especially our New York Knickerbockers. Also, one thing we didn't mention, if they get through game 5, they have a really good shot at game 6 because they're going to have 3 days rest in between. So something to keep in mind.
Do you think OG comes back for that? Also, that's a possibility, although I'd have to imagine he's on minutes restriction.
I don't know. I think there's a chance he could be back by game 6. I think he would play in game 7 to some extent. We'll see. Hopefully it doesn't get to that. Hopefully it doesn't get to that because the Knicks win. But if the Knicks can't win by then hopefully it gets to game 7. We'll see. All right. That, again, is our show for today. I hope everybody has a great rest of the week, and I will see you on Friday.